Okay, this is part 3 of question mark of my synopsis, my oral reminiscences of my glorious global career from the earliest days to 2018. So I got a little sidetracked with that Australian description, and so I apologize. I thought I could trim that out, but I can't. So I'll just keep rolling, okay? What else is new? Let's see. Let's start with arriving in Australia. I got a wonderful position with an architect at first in near my apartment in West Perth, and we worked on educational facilities, and it was really fun, and I had a wonderful time exploring the city. And then I got a position within a few blocks of the top design firm in Australia, and they had offices in Perth, Sydney, everywhere, and I really loved it. And it was there that in my spare time I decided, well, let me find a hobby. I don't really have a hobby. And when I explored the city, so I was walking around with a sketchbook, and I started noticing historic architecture of the city, all of which was rapidly vanishing. I would make a list of places I wanted to sketch, and I go back next week and they're gone. They're demolished, rapidly, utterly gone, for either high-rise buildings or parking lots or you name it. The city itself is very modern, and the firm I worked for designed many of the high-rises, some of which at the time were extremely tall. They were like 60 stories, I believe. Wow. And now they're probably 100. But this was 1973, I guess. I don't know. So I, on weekends, would sketch with a pen, a rapidograph, an ink pen, on site, these with an umbrella for the sun, the fiercest UV on the planet. Now I'm getting all those souvenirs removed, but 40, 50 years later. But anyhow, I would sketch these and take them to a gallery, a framer to be framed for my own use, and I would hang them around just to decorate, to inspire me about the historic architecture. And I got a wonderful letter from James D. Van Trump. He was a friend of mine in Pittsburgh when I lived in Shadyside, and he was the go-to person for historic preservation. I believe he founded the Allegheny County History and Landmarks Foundation, which is in the old post office, former post office building in the Mexican War Street area. I believe that's on the north side of Pittsburgh. So he and I became great friends, and when I moved to Australia, he wrote me a letter saying, waxing romantic as he would, about all the verandas and the corrugated iron, the ornamentation, the Victorianness of all that, even though it was a little bit later than the Victorian era. And he just knew a lot about the historic architecture of Australia, which I noticed visually. But I felt like a bit of a traitor because it wasn't modernist, and I felt like I was skulking around sketching these rapidly before they vanished, and would add a watercolor wash and have them framed, and I had a whole assortment of them that I loved as reminiscences of my time in Perth. And he inspired me to keep going with this idea. And as I was taking some more in to be framed, the framers were opening a new, beautiful art gallery in Subiaco, the Churchill Gallery, and would I be interested in having an exhibition of my work? Well, maybe, although I was still sort of in the closet about liking historic buildings, while I'm an architect helping to put up these gigantic modernist, beautiful buildings. Well, I had an exhibition. It was a huge success, and it was a hobby, but pretty soon I was getting so many commissions of owners of these wonderful historic homes and businesses and buildings that I actually ended up quitting my day job and doing nothing but that because a publisher asked if I wouldn't mind doing a book. He was from England, and he had moved out to Australia. And so I said, of course, that sounds great. So he did, I believe it was 1,000 hardcover first. Usually you do the softcover first, or is it vice versa? No, the softcover comes first usually. But he did 1,000 signed and numbered limited edition hardcover books of this work. About 100 of my pen and ink sketches. We couldn't do the watercolor wash because there were no computers yet to easily do a 3-color process without breaking the bank. So this beautiful, we used Artotex paper. It was the most expensive paper. The binding was Smith sewn hardcover with a dust jacket. And he did a magnificent job, and it was called Vanishing Ink. It's still in the library of the National Library of Australia. Maybe they'll let you look at a copy digitally. I have a copy. Well, so then ABC TV did an interview of me about this upcoming book that had not yet hit the bookstores. And just by luck, the interview was the broadcast live on ABC, Australian Broadcasting Commission, happened election night, national election night. I forget what year that was. And everyone was tuned in for the election results. This book sold out before the hardcover. So I was busily signing 1,000 copies. I got a royalty. And then it went into softcover editions, which I lost count of by the time I left. But it was a wonderful motivation for me to stay busy with these. And then the publisher wanted me to do a book of Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide. I'd been to all these places with beautiful historic neighborhoods and buildings, all rapidly vanishing. But I soon learned that I had to give up my American citizenship if I wanted to stay in business there. And that was my deciding factor. Although I did almost have to flip a coin because it was so tempting to stay. Who wouldn't? Perfect day in paradise, free healthcare, free everything, free education. I was enrolled in a master's degree, graduate degree in architecture there. No cost. Free dental care, free mental health care, free everything. And it was socialist. It was a socialist country, guilty as charged. And everyone was educated, as I mentioned, and healthy, pretty much as they could be. So it was a hard decision to make. But by 1975, I decided, well, I should do a book for the bicentennial, 1976, of my home state of Pennsylvania. I think I'll come back and do that. But I did the book there. I came over many times one year for trips to photograph and to research, and then I would go back and do the sketches. And then I carried all these on the plane over to a printer in Pennsylvania, and I paid them a lot of money, but it was one of the few ways to get money out of Australia legally, because there was no copyright reciprocation between America and Australia at the time. So you could publish books using Australian money. Everything was so tightly controlled. So I legally was able to send checks to the created a publishing company to send checks to the United States to publish this book in time, June 1976. And I was publishing it out of Harrisburg. That was the plan. And in 1 year, I went back and forth so many times, I honestly didn't know whether I was leaving. It's so far. It's a 28-hour flight. Was I leaving or arriving? In fact, at one point, I dozed off, and I woke up, and I asked a steward, are we arriving in Perth, or have we just left Perth for New York? And he said, mate, you don't know if you're coming or going. I said, that's exactly right. Perth was straight down through the earth. Either way around the world was the same flying time, 28 hours on a 747 at top speed, with only a few stops by then in between. You could either go Perth, Sydney, which is a 7-hour flight, American Samoa, Samoa, Hawaii, Honolulu, Honolulu, LA, LA, New York. Or keep staying on the plane and go the whole way around the world. The last year I went around the world 3 times, which to me proved the world is round. I don't think it was simulated. I'm not one of those flat earthers, can you tell? So I was so jet-lagged all the time. And so when I was coming back finally to launch this book in June, and this was in April of '76, I flew into Kennedy Airport and took a taxi into the city to catch the train to Harrisburg, a high-speed train, to my hometown to publish this book in a hurry so I could get ready to launch it and distribute it. And I'd missed the train, just missed the train. And I'd been flying for 3 days. I was exhausted, and I was lugging all this stuff, and I knew it was my final trip home, back here, to my homeland. And so I walked up to Port Authority, and I thought they've got to have a bus to Harrisburg. And they did, so I got on the bus, and I dozed off, and it stopped and let everyone off the bus at this place called Easton. I thought, Easton? Where is this? I'd never been here. So I asked the bus driver, where are we? He said, and I had an Australian accent with a London and Welsh accent thrown in for good measure. He goes, well, this is Pennsylvania. This is Easton, Pennsylvania. I said, no, it can't be. We just left New York, although I did doze off for 30 minutes. This can't be Pennsylvania, because I had counted, once I woke up going through the town, 7 interracial couples holding hands in broad daylight on a weekday, and it was not an interracial pride parade. Pennsylvania is not that live and let live. I'm from Harrisburg, which at the time was a racially segregated city, and I hated that about it. He said, no, look, there's New Jersey, and all the people behind me in line, I'm keeping in line to get on or off the bus. They're going, no, look, here, this is PA, honestly. I said, well, I have to be in Pennsylvania to publish this book for the Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was considered the bicentennial state, and it's my home state. And I thought, it can't be New Jersey. I've got to publish it in PA, or I won't be able to have any credibility, because it celebrated the historic architecture of the entire state of Pennsylvania that did not include Easton, because I had never been to Easton, unfortunately. So he said, no, this is PA. So when he convinced me, this was a 20-minute layover that has now become, in April, 43 years. Serendipity, thank you. Serendipity with a small s. Now, I can't see the time on this. Oh, I see I'm already 13 minutes. Well, anyway, so I wanted to talk about how I arrived in Easton. And it was on Transport New Jersey bus. No, it was Greyhound. It was a Greyhound bus from New York to Harrisburg that stopped here 20 minutes. I never got back on the bus. I went up to the driver, and I said, I'm home. The architecture, the hills, the rivers, the beauty of this town. It was booming in April of 1976. I didn't see one vacant store. And it was just, I thought, it's England. I'm back in England. I love England. Look at this architecture at Town Square. I'm home. So right away, I didn't even get back on the bus. I said, I'm home. Luckily, I was portable, and I can publish the book here if they can change the date. Not the date, the address on the back of the book, the printer, to Easton instead of Harrisburg. So I quick called them, and yes, they could. I got them at the last day they could do that, because the book's coming out in a few months. And so here I landed through total serendipity. So I'll end here and pick up on part 4 of Question Mark.